Hello and welcome to Cloud Speed by Deloitte. In this regular podcast series, we'll delve into the world of cloud, answering some of those tricky questions, getting to grips with all that cloud has to offer, and keeping you up to speed on recent developments. So let's begin, shall we? Here is your host, Adam Gogarty.
Hello, I'm Adam Gogarty, a director in our cloud engineering practice here at Deloitte, and I'll be your host for this episode of Cloud Speed. Today we'll be answering the question, what's the business case for cloud? According to Gartner, over 10% of IT spend in the UK will be on public cloud services by 2022. But what's the financial case behind this? Why are organisations across the country directing their investments towards public cloud services at such a pace? And to provide you with our thoughts on this topic, I'm delighted to be joined by my colleagues Prathmesh Jadhav, a senior manager in our cloud strategy team.
Thanks, Adam. Great to be here.
And Neil Hidroth, a senior manager who leads our cloud managed services product team.
Thanks, Adam. Looking forward to this.
So thanks both for being here. Before we jump into today's topic, I'll let you introduce yourselves to our audience.
Thanks, Adam. And hello, everyone. This is Prathmesh Jadhav from Deloitte's cloud strategy team. The topic of cloud business case and financial management in general has been one of my focus areas for the last 5+ years now. So always happy to have a chat about it. Additionally, on a day-to-day basis, I partner with our financial services clients, advising and delivering on their cloud migration journeys. Outside of work, I love spending time on the cricket field, playing club matches, and cooking with my wife at home.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Prathmesh. Hi, everyone. I'm Neil Hidroth. I'm part of the Deloitte Cloud Managed Services team here, and I lead the product management function. So what does that mean? I look after the standardization and implementation of services for Deloitte in UK around the managed service. That looks at the legal, pricing, market research and strategy aspects of the managed service and everything that comes with product management around it as well. You know, a long time ago, my background started off in Linux and application engineering. Then I moved into service architecture and then product management. I'm not a cook like Prathmesh is, but I'm keen to learn more about cooking. So hopefully I can subscribe to Prathmesh's own blog or vlog or whatever you do, Prathmesh, right?
Absolutely, yes. Instagram.
Brilliant. And a Linux engineer, though, Les. I think I also was an engineer back in the day, so you're my new best friend, Neil. Fantastic. Excellent. Well, we've certainly got the right people on the podcast, haven't we?
We certainly have. So I know, Adam, this topic of cloud financial management and cloud business case has been very close to your heart as well. Why don't we start with your thoughts on this area of cloud business case in general?
Well, indeed. Yeah, the big question, I guess. So I guess for me, the business case boils down to the value created for the organisation, and its stakeholders. So depending on the industry, these stakeholders might be customers or citizens or shareholders and more. And the value created by cloud is often enabled by doing things faster, safer and better. And really for me, during the formative years of cloud adoption, many business cases were quite focused on cost savings. Those cost savings were predominantly around IT, so for example, infrastructure or back office services, so things like HR processes. But in reality, the driver was actually getting access to, rich, on-demand, greater functionality that cloud service providers can offer. And so increasingly, the business case is for me about creating shareholder value for businesses or ultimately public value for citizens. And at Deloitte, we tend to think about two sides of the cloud business case as above the line and below the line. And above the line is all about increasing revenue or the quality of service by better integrating an organization through insights and data, or creating new and better customer experiences and products through things like machine learning, virtual reality and analytics, and ultimately unleashing this new kind of talent and ways of working by providing product teams and software developers with those richer and functional cloud services so they can ultimately build better products faster. And the below the line is ultimately about that kind of reducing cost. And that might be achieved through streamlining back office processes by standardizing onto common processes and ways of doing things, scaling your IT costs and expenses only as and when you need it, or kind of improving business resilience and security by using these, global available cloud services. But Prathmesh, I guess you've been fortunate enough to see cloud business cases on both sides of the Atlantic. So So I guess what are some of the most compelling business cases for cloud that you've seen?
Yeah, that's right, Adam. And I think there are three common attributes with the solid cloud business case that I've observed on both sides of the pond. The first one being a strong business case is more than just the financial numbers, right? The business strategy and the digital ambition of the organization is a key factor that should guide the cloud business case and the overall cloud journey. This ties back to the point you just made about the line below the line, right? So it's about making sure you know what your above the line aspects are and making sure they're baked into the business case itself. Additionally, I think the business case needs to be hyper customized to the organization's current IT estate and the target state vision they're trying to drive towards. Secondly, I think it is imperative that the cloud business case isn't just a blue sky academic exercise. It needs to be aligned very closely with the execution plan. This means baking in the impacts of items such as architectural choices, resource staffing, tooling, app refactoring, all of that into the business case. And lastly, the business case should provide a yardstick for the cloud journey. But at the same time, it needs to be built with an eye on the future by allowing for flexibility as things evolve within the organization as well as externally in the market.
Thanks, Prathamesh. That's really interesting. And I guess to change tack slightly, Neil, I guess you've got an equally unique perspective to bring here, having worked across multiple managed service businesses. So I guess from an IT operator's perspective, is the cloud cheaper?
It's one of those common questions that I get asked a lot. And in my experience, yes, it is. Operationally, these are solid platforms. AWS has fundamentally come out of a massive retail business. Azure has come out of an Office 365 business, which is massive with Microsoft. Dare I say Google Cloud, where that's come from, everyone uses Google Search. So they're so well engineered and organized, these platforms, that you only tend to notice them when they have a significant blip. And obviously, because of their scale, that blip is significant because of the volume of users that they have on the platforms. But all in all, these platforms can pretty much cope with anything you throw at them. They're engineered for scale, availability, and security that most organizations will only ever dream of achieving. I've seen traditional enterprise applications like SharePoint get migrated to the public cloud and get a massive 40% performance improvement. Migrating the platform surfaced issues in the custom SharePoint site that were otherwise masked in a data center. Most data centers, even from service providers who aren't hyperscale, have gremlins in them. This was a prime example where some bottlenecks hidden in the data center was masked away and never found out, apart from when it was migrated to the public cloud. And it was having a material impact on their application. It's these hypothetical gremlins that cause high operational costs when diagnosing what's wrong, because it isn't simple and it's built on something of years of technical debt you simply don't see in the public cloud.
Gosh, yes, but beware of the gremlins, I guess, Neil, is is the advice I've got on there. So, no, really, really insightful. Thank you. And I guess, Prathamesh, then, is it particularly different building the cloud business case to traditional cases?
Yes and no, right? So I think the four pillars of building any business case in general stay the same. So things like target state vision, investments, benefits, and timeline, the four areas, they stay exactly the same. However, that being said, there are key differences between the two. So the first one being, when you build a cloud business case, the entire data center estate and the software licensing that is required for the data center is under your addressable scope, right? Which is generally pretty big. So this is very much unlike building a business case for your CRM systems or your integration systems, when only a handful of applications and handful of servers and underlying infrastructure is in play. So to give you an example, at one of my previous client engagements, the annual run rate for running the data center, along with the tech refresh budget, was a part of the hybrid cloud migration business case. The second difference is the fact that cloud can be such a fundamental part of how IT services are delivered and consumed. We commonly see transformation levers such as agile software development and CI/CD tooling roped into the cloud business case. And the primary reason for this is the operational benefits that cloud unlocks across the software development lifecycle. It is important to capture some of these software benefits, right? Because if you do not represent them, you're not representing the holistic picture of a cloud business case. And lastly, I believe a good cloud business case needs to offer a dozen dials that can be fine-tuned. So for example, how many apps do you want to migrate as is, or how many do you want to refactor? Do you want to bring your own licenses to the cloud, or do you want to use something that the cloud provider offers? And what is the right time to move on to the use of reserved instances? So at Deloitte, we have several platforms such as the Cloud Workbench and the Cloud Value Calculator that we have developed and used at multiple engagements in order to answer such questions. Neil, given we heard you speaking about your managed services experience and some of the insights from there, anything more to add from an operations experience standpoint on this topic?
Yeah, thanks, Prathmesh. Just a few points to add. What I'd say is when looking at the business case, there are factors that you need to consider that don't typically come front of mind as well. You need to think around how regulated your business is. How are you going to maintain or enhance your compliance to whichever standard your regulator has set? And can you swap out some of the on-premise security technologies and make savings around these security technologies and use cloud native ones instead? It's frustrating when people compare the compute aspects of cloud and they say their compute platform is cheaper. The reality is that it might be if you're just looking at the physical tin, but you need to consider much more than that. You need to consider the investment these cloud providers are putting into developing and securing their platform. We've heard from AWS, a couple of their reinvents a few years ago, where they were saying that they invest billions of dollars a year. In fact, I believe it was a top investment that they make in their platform was just around security alone. So don't fall into this trap of just comparing compute versus tin in your data center, because you're not comparing apples to apples. Also remember how much technical and architectural debt you have. This can really influence your footprint when you build out in cloud. Remember to look at where you are on your life cycle of operational software as well. Does your monitoring platform need an upgrade to support your cloud environments? Savings can be achieved here if you're swapping out technologies for cloud native services as well. And it's worth remembering just how much investment you've made to your people and your processes and tooling to operate your cloud. If you're simply using it like a data center, then you're unlikely to see the financial return, as I'll bet good money it won't get transformed. If you're introducing cloud to your organization and you want to leverage infrastructure as code, then you're likely going to need some level of awareness around the infrastructure as code, what it means to your processes, and whether your people can operate things in a version controlled way. That brings to the forefront you need to think about training your people on version control and version control management, because it's going to be like a new language to them. It also means that they need to think far more around automation than what they probably do, rather than click ops and managing the cloud via the console. The thing to avoid is simply migrating to the cloud and then not transforming the solution. One of the key benefits of using a service provider is they're invested to migrate and operate the solution in the cloud as efficiently whilst maintaining the highest level of SLA, and they're here to help the organization transform. Remember, the more the service provider helps you transform, the more it drives both businesses.
Thanks, Neil. So, ultimately, there's lots of different things to think about, aren't there, when you're building out one of these business cases? So I guess, Prathmesh, how can you avoid or perhaps better face into these challenges when you're building the case?
That's a difficult one, but I guess one of the ways to look at is let's get the basics right? So what I mean by that is, number one, your IT, finance, and business leaders need to be aligned and invested on the overall cloud mission and have full sponsorship behind it. Second is the timelines for cloud adoption should be kept realistic, and it's best to start with a proof of concept before attempting to create a financial case for the cloud. This should allow you to understand your design requirements and your current IT estate much better, and thus understand the impacts that need to be driven into the cloud business case. The third point is around the migration bubble itself, right? So this is a key area that can easily get missed out or miscalculated when building a business case. The migration bubble is basically the time during which you're running a specific workload in general on the cloud as well as the data center estate. So it's important to make sure the timeline and the staffing and the licenses, etc., required for the migration bubble are estimated correctly. And the last one, surely not the least, is around revisiting the business case on a quarterly basis to make sure that it's aligned with the realities of what's going on the ground. Because as we know, the world of cloud is changing pretty fast, and the decisions you make on the ground as you're working through a program are going to have impacts on the business case itself. So it's important to make sure those decisions are baked into the business case, and you do have some degree of contingency planned in your version 1 of the business case, so you can have the ability to alter the business case going forward.
I'm sure you guys will agree as well. I think it's really important to be realistic with yourself as well when even attempting to go on a cloud journey. One of my almost favorite pieces of advice I've always given to clients is really, as you're starting out, is to really focus on the adoption of one cloud first. Yes, multi-cloud is a thing and it's all over the press at the moment. But if you're new to cloud, you're going to be going into an uphill struggle if you try and adopt multiple cloud platforms all at once. You can't expect to realize the benefits across multiple clouds if you've never experienced one cloud first. If you're new to cloud, I'd look at ways of de-risking your strategy and leveraging the experience of service providers fundamentally, as they can help you prove the business case is justifiable and shorten your time to value as well. And Adam, I know you're often at the coalface presenting these business cases to the board, particularly CFOs and financial directors. What's been the key from your perspective in ensuring the business case is clear to that kind of audience?
Great question. So I think I found it's key to start from something they understand, which sounds simple, but really work through it logically and absolutely avoid the techno jargon that we can often fall into. And so if that audience is, as you say, is the CFO or the FD, maybe consider starting, from a budget that they recognise and even structure it in a view that they would understand, like a profit and loss view. But ultimately, I found that boil it down to the cost and the benefit components that they'd recognise. So how is this going to impact our revenue or our budget? And how's it going to impact the expenses across things like assets and contracts and staff? But of course, the business case is only, I guess, the beginning, Neil. So what have we learned from managing cloud services for clients that can help, protect or even increase the benefits forecasted?
In managed services, we see clients across a wide spectrum of ability. We see clients who are absolute beginners through to semi-experts. The thing that's consistent with all the client accounts that we see when we migrate them into our management is that they aren't optimized in any way. This is from multiple dimensions like cost, security, availability, or even performance. It's the same thing over and over again. And my advice to people is to pay attention to the tools that the cloud providers provide. Prime example would be AWS Trusted Advisor. It can really help you save money, improve security, and help you spot availability and performance concerns. It's worth remembering that the beauty of leveraging a service provider is that not only do they have the skills to architect and build things right, they'll also look at things on an ongoing and make recommendations around how to optimize the environment. Developers are great at building amazing software, building out things in cloud, but at the moment, it's rare to get a financially savvy developer. I'm sure the day will come one day. It's part of the reason why the role of FinOps is becoming prevalent in the market now.
Couldn't agree more with Neil here. The space of cloud financial operations, or FinOps, is growing on a day-to-day basis as organizations are facing the need to manage their cloud spend, just like they've been managing their data center spend to date. At the beginning of the cloud adoption journey, it is tricky to manage the speed of adoption while keeping the cost low. You just need to determine what's most important to you, right? So is it speed, is it quality, or is it cost? However, for clients that have a sizable cloud footprint, the issue of growing cloud spend is very much real and needs to be tackled systematically. That's where FinOps comes into play. It's about putting together a team consisting of IT and finance members that develop and promote good practices and metrics for cloud cost management across the organization. So at Deloitte, we have spent close to 4 years now maturing our capabilities in this space, many of which are already a part of cloud managed services offering. We have also worked with clients to reduce their cloud spend through visibility, automation, and continuous improvements. So this is surely an area that is going to become increasingly important as the overall cloud spend grows.
A brilliant way to kind of end that discussion, really. And so clearly, there's a lot to be thinking about when we talk about the cloud business case. It could be small or very large, depending on really what's transformed through it. And I know we can keep going on with this topic, but unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode, Prathmesh.
Anytime, Adam. Thank you.
And thank you to Neil for joining.
Yeah, no problems. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Prathmesh.
But as always, before we close off, we'll have another round of cloud updates. And this week, coming from Sundar Ramaswamy, our Google lead solution architect from Deloitte. Over to you, Sundar.
Thanks, Adam and team. That was quite a detailed overview on cloud cost optimization. Today, I would like to bring in a Google angle to this discussion, or more specifically, how organizations can actually achieve cost optimization leveraging Google Cloud capabilities. There are three things that I would like to touch upon. The first one being cloud visibility. One of the common mistakes that I've seen organizations make is when they shift from an on-premise capital expenditure or capex model to a cloud-based operational expenditure model. Clients many times do not have a good understanding of the total cost of ownership for the applications or services to be deployed in the cloud. Now, this could potentially have disastrous consequences, as in the absence of standard guardrails, the engineers in your team have a free hand. They could potentially spin up resources with a few button clicks, and that in turn could throw your entire budget into disarray. More importantly, this leads to wasted resources in the long run, because of which the very premise of moving to the cloud, that is elasticity, ends up becoming counterintuitive in the sense that customers actually fail to get a good picture of the total cost of ownership, which in turn means that they cannot plan their cloud spend budget. The way that Google addresses this issue is it organizes and structures costs as per business needs. Customers can use cloud billing reports in Google to get a cost summary, or they could use more granular cost views by building their own dashboards. Customers eventually want to get to a position where they can effectively determine that if they spent a certain amount of dollars on a specific cloud resource, what revenue it generated, and Google Cloud Billing Reports enables customers to get into that level of granularity. The second logical step in this direction, that is in cost optimization, is to pay only for the resources that are actually needed. Google Cloud provides a unique feature called Recommender that actually offers suggestions on right sizing VMs. So for example, you could have over-provisioned a compute instance or maybe a persistent disk and would never realize that it is being used at say 30 or 40% capacity, but you could end up paying a lot more than the actual usage. What Google Cloud does is it offers several recommenders that can identify things like inactive VMs or maybe persistent disks based on usage metrics. In one of my recent engagements, we were actually able to identify a bunch of zombie VMs that were running in a supposedly inactive environment. And using the Google Recommender capability, it helped us in bringing down the overall spend of the client. The third piece, which most organizations tend to overlook, is the network usage. Now, with the advent of hybrid and multi-cloud environments that span across on-premise and cloud, it is actually a bit difficult to get clear visibility into your network usage. And again, this can be a factor that results in spiraling costs. The network topology feature in Google Cloud addresses this concern. What it does is it provides comprehensive visibility into all network performance metrics. Using this capability, organizations can identify which services consume the maximum bandwidth or maybe which deployments are inefficient, and they could in turn optimize regional and intercontinental egress costs, which is a pain point for many organizations. So all in all, whether you are a startup awaiting funding or maybe a large enterprise with a significant global footprint, everyone wants to be smart with the money right now. And the right way to go about this is to optimize cloud costs. So in addition to the key ones that I spoke about earlier, like granular cost reports, recommender, and network topology, Google Cloud provides a host of other cost optimization features that helps customers distribute their cloud budget wisely. After all, who doesn't want to save that extra buck and leverage it wisely for building additional capability? That's it from my end, Adam. Thanks for having me over, and also good to talk about anything cloud. Back to you.
Brilliant. Thanks. And there's some top tips for optimizing your spend on Google Cloud there. So that brings us to the end of today's episode. We hope you've enjoyed listening. If you have, please make sure to share it with someone who you think will enjoy it too. Please do reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn at Adam Gogarty, or if you'd like to find out more on Deloitte's cloud capabilities, please visit deloitte.co.uk/cloud. In the meantime, though, I'm Adam Gogarty, and you've been listening to Cloud Speed by Deloitte. Thanks for tuning in.